Tonight, we will explore letting go. Not as an idea to master, and not as something to achieve, but as a quiet movement that already knows how to happen on its own. In ordinary life, letting go often sounds dramatic, as if it requires effort or courage or a great decision. Here, we will stay close to a simpler meaning. Letting go as the small, almost invisible release that happens when we stop holding something a moment longer than needed. Before we begin, feel free to share what time it is and where you're listening from. There is nothing to remember tonight. There is no need to stay awake. You can listen loosely. You may drift in and out. It's okay if parts of this pass by without being heard. We will spend the night together with a few quiet stories and some gentle reflections, moving slowly, without hurry. And we will begin with a story, as people have always done when the day is finished and the world has grown dim. Long ago, in a valley where the seasons arrived without much announcement, there lived a potter named Matteo. Matteo was not famous. His bowls were not carried to distant cities, and no one traveled far to see his work. He lived near a bend in the river, in a small house with a low roof that caught the sound of rain. Each morning, when the light was still pale, Matteo walked down to the water, gathered clay from the bank, and carried it home in a simple wooden basket. Matteo worked slowly. He had learned the craft from an older potter who spoke very little and corrected him even less. Most of what Matteo learned came from ruined bowls, collapsed walls, and glazes that cracked in the kiln. Over time, his hands grew accustomed to the clay's moods. He could feel when it wanted to rise and when it wanted to fall. But there was one bowl Matteo could not finish. It sat on a low shelf near his wheel, wrapped in a cloth. Each day, he uncovered it, turned it in his hands, and frowned. The rim was uneven by the smallest measure. Not enough for a customer to notice, but enough that Matteo felt it every time he touched it. He tried smoothing it. He tried trimming it. He even tried starting over. But each new bowl carried the memory of the first. Weeks passed. Other bowls were made, fired, sold, and used. This one remained. At night, when the house was quiet, Matteo sometimes found himself thinking about it. He wondered why this bowl mattered so much. He had made hundreds before it, and he would make hundreds after. Still, this one followed him, as if asking for something he did not know how to give. One evening, an older woman named Lydia stopped by. She lived upstream and was known for her plain speech and careful eyes. She often traded vegetables for bowls, choosing them without comment. That night, she noticed the wrapped shape on the shelf. "You keep something hidden," she said, not accusing, only observing. Matteo hesitated, then handed her the bowl. She turned it slowly, tracing the rim with one finger. "It holds water," she said. "I know," Matteo replied, "but it isn't right." Lydia nodded. "Is it unfinished?" "No." "Is it broken?" "No." She placed it back on the shelf, uncovered. "Then perhaps it is finished, and something else is not." She took her vegetables and left, the door closing softly behind her. Matteo stood alone with the bowl. He felt a quiet irritation rise, then fade. He sat by the wheel and looked at his hands. They were stained with clay, lined with age, steady and familiar. For the first time in weeks, he did not reach for the bowl. The next morning, he wrapped it again, not carefully, not carelessly. He placed it among the others and carried it to the market. When someone bought it without hesitation, Matteo felt a small tightening in his chest, and then, just as quickly, a release. The bowl was gone. The shelf was empty. That evening, the house felt larger. When we hear a story like this, we might be tempted to turn it into advice. We might say, Matteo learned to accept imperfection, or that he overcame pride, or that he discovered some deeper truth about his craft. Those ideas may appear, but we don't need to chase them. Instead, we can stay with the simple movement that happened. Matteo held something. Matteo noticed the holding. At some point, the holding loosened. Letting go often looks like this. Not a grand decision, but a quiet shift. Something we have been gripping, without knowing it, simply slips from our hands when the time is right. In our own lives, the bowls may look different. It might be a conversation we replay long after it has ended, a version of ourselves we keep trying to improve, a worry that has become so familiar it feels like part of us. We may tell ourselves that we are holding on because it matters, because it keeps us safe, because letting go would mean losing something important. And sometimes, that is true for a while. Holding has its season, but there is also a season when holding begins to tire us. Letting go is not something we force in that moment. If we try, the grip often tightens. Instead, letting go happens when we see, very clearly and very gently, that we are still holding. That seeing is enough. Notice how, in the story, no one told Matteo what to do. Lydia did not instruct him. She did not explain. She simply reflected what was already there. The bowl was finished. Something else was unfinished. Often, what remains unfinished is our need for things to be otherwise. We want the past to be different. We want ourselves to have known more, acted better, spoken differently. We want certainty where there is none. Letting go does not erase these wants. It does not scold them or push them away. It allows them to rest. When we let go, we are not throwing anything out. We are setting it down. There is a difference. Setting something down means we trust that we can pick it up again if we need to. Throwing something away carries fear. Setting something down carries ease. As the night moves on, stories like Mateo's may blend with your own memories. You might think of something you have been carrying for a long time, or nothing in particular may come to mind at all. Both are fine. The teaching of letting go does not require participation. It does not ask for effort. It unfolds whether we are paying attention or not. Sometimes the mind listens closely. Sometimes it drifts. Sometimes sleep arrives in the middle of a sentence. All of this belongs if we stay with the feeling of the story rather than its details. We might notice a quiet spaciousness around it. The bowl is made. The bowl is sold. Life continues. The river moves on without comment. Letting go often feels like this spaciousness, not empty in a lonely way, but open. Less crowded, less tight. And in that openness, there is room for rest. We will continue together, slowly, with more stories and reflections, letting the night carry us as it will. As the night deepens, we can allow the story of Mateo to settle without finishing it in our minds. It does not need a conclusion. It has already done its quiet work. Another life comes to mind now, from a different place, where the air was dry and the paths were dusty, and the days passed without much change. There was once a traveler named Annika, who walked between villages carrying a small pack. She was not a merchant in the usual sense. She sold nothing of her own making. Instead, she carried messages, letters spoken aloud and remembered carefully, from people who could not travel themselves. Annika had a good memory. She listened closely, repeated words silently as she walked, and delivered them with care. She believed that accuracy was a kind of respect. Over time, she became known for this, and people trusted her. One afternoon, an elderly man named Thomas asked her to carry a message to his brother in a village 2 days away. Thomas spoke slowly, pausing often, as if choosing each word from a deep place. Annika listened, nodding, storing the message as she always did. When he finished, Thomas looked at her and said, "Tell him that I am well. Tell him I think of him when the sun goes down." Annika repeated the words back to him. "Exactly." Thomas smiled. relieved. That evening, as Annika walked alone, she noticed that the message stayed with her differently than others. It felt heavier, as if it wanted to be held more tightly. She repeated it again and again, afraid of losing a single word. The next day, as she crossed a shallow stream, she slipped on a stone and caught herself. Nothing was lost. Her pack was dry. Still, her heart raced. She found herself repeating the message again, urgently. By the time she reached the second village, the words felt worn, like a stone rubbed smooth by worry. She delivered them to Thomas's brother, a quiet man named Elias, who listened without interruption. When Annika finished, Elias nodded. His eyes filled briefly, then cleared. "Thank you," he said simply. Annika waited, expecting something more. A reply, another message to carry back. But Elias said nothing. He stood for a moment, then turned and went inside his house. Annika felt an unexpected emptiness. The message was gone. The careful holding was no longer needed. She stood in the dusty street, unsure what to do with her hands. That night, she stayed in the village. Sleep came lightly. The next morning, she prepared to leave. As she walked, she noticed that her steps felt different. Lighter, perhaps, or less focused. Later that day, she met a woman named Soraya, resting by the roadside. They spoke briefly, as travelers do. Soraya asked what Annika carried. "Words," Annika replied. Soraya smiled. "And when the words arrive," Annika considered this, "then they leave me." Soraya nodded. "That is good. Words are not meant to stay." They parted without ceremony. In this story, there is no mistake, no lesson learned in a sharp moment. Annika did her work well, and yet, something subtle happened when the work was finished. She had been holding the message with great care. That holding gave her purpose, direction, and a sense of importance. When it was gone, there was a brief confusion, even a sense of loss. This, too, is part of letting go. Often, we imagine letting go as relief alone, but sometimes, before relief, there is a small hollow space. Something we were oriented around is no longer there. The mind asks, quietly, "Now what?" We may recognize this feeling. After a long task ends, after a relationship changes, after a worry finally loosens its grip, there can be a pause, a moment where the old shape is gone and the new one has not yet appeared. Letting go does not rush to fill this space. It allows it. In the space that follows, letting go, there is often a softness we are not used to. Without the familiar tension, we may feel unanchored. But if we stay gently, without grasping for the next thing, the ground shows itself. Notice how Annika did not immediately take on a new message. She walked. She noticed her steps. She spoke with a stranger. Life continued, not because she planned it, but because it does. Letting go trusts this continuation. It trusts that life does not depend on our constant holding. As we move through the night, listening in whatever way we are listening now, we might sense small holdings within us. They do not need to be named. They do not need to be released. They only need to be allowed to be seen. Sometimes, holding looks like effort. Sometimes, it looks like vigilance. Sometimes, it looks like repeating something again and again, afraid it will be lost. And sometimes, letting go begins when we realize that what we are holding has already arrived where it needs to be. The words were spoken. The bowl was finished. The message was delivered. What remains does not require our grip. Another story drifts in now, quieter still. In a mountain village where mornings were cold and evenings long, there lived a woodcutter named Pavel. He worked alone, cutting fallen branches and small trees, never more than he needed. Each winter, he stacked firewood carefully beside his house, arranging it just so. Pavel had a habit. Each time he added a log to the stack, he adjusted the others, making sure the lines were straight, the edges even. This took time. Neighbors teased him gently, but Pavel smiled and continued. One year, a heavy snow came early. Trees fell across paths. The village gathered to clear them. Pavel worked alongside others, lifting, cutting, passing wood hand to hand. By the time he returned home, it was dark. He looked at his wood pile and paused. It was uneven. Logs were placed quickly, without care. For a moment, he considered rearranging them, despite the cold. Then he noticed his hands. They were tired. His breath steamed in the air. The night was quiet. He went inside. The next morning, the sun rose, light catching the irregular shapes of the pile. Pavel studied it. Something had changed. The wood was still there. It would still burn. The warmth it offered was the same. Over the winter, he added to it without much thought. The careful lines never returned, and yet, Pavel found that he sat more easily by the fire, listening to it crackle, watching the flames without adjusting them in his mind. Here, letting go came not from understanding, but from fatigue, from the body knowing when enough effort has been spent. We often forget this kindness. We imagine that letting go must come from insight or wisdom, but sometimes it comes simply because we are tired of holding. There is no failure in this. In fact, there is a deep intelligence in it. The mind holds until it cannot. The body carries until it sets things down. Life invites rest without explanation. As we listen now, perhaps the night itself is doing some of this work for us. Darkness removes detail. Sound softens. The world asks less of us. We do not need to respond. Letting go does not require agreement. It does not ask us to believe anything new. It happens quietly, often without our consent, like sleep arriving while we are still listening. If thoughts drift, they drift. If memories surface, they surface. If nothing comes at all, that too is part of the letting go. We are not aiming for a particular state. We are simply keeping company with these stories, allowing them to pass through us as messages once passed through Annika, as bowls passed through Mateo's hands, as logs passed through Pavel's stack. They come, they stay a while, they leave, and in this simple rhythm, the night continues to unfold, carrying us gently, whether we notice or not. The night moves on without marking the hours. Somewhere, a clock may be ticking, or a train passing in the distance. But here, those details soften. The stories continue, not to keep us awake, but to keep us company. There is another life we can sit with now, from a place near the sea, where the wind carried salt and the days were shaped by tides. A woman named Maribel lived in a small house overlooking the harbor. For many years, she mended fishing nets. Her hands were quick and patient, her eyes trained to notice small breaks before they became large ones. Fishermen brought their nets to her at the end of the day, and Maribel worked by the window as the light faded, knotting and repairing. Maribel had once gone out to sea herself. When she was younger, she'd worked on a boat with her partner, a man named Inigo. They had shared the work, the meals, the long silences between tasks. When Inigo died unexpectedly, Maribel stopped going out on the water. She stayed on land and took up the quieter work of mending. Years passed. The harbor changed. New boats arrived. Old ones left. Maribel's hands grew slower, but her knots remained strong. One evening, a young fisherman named Raphael brought her a net torn badly along one edge. He apologized, saying it might be beyond repair. Maribel spread it out and examined it. It can be mended, she said, as she always did. As she worked, she noticed something she had not felt in a long time. A faint pull in her chest, a memory of standing on a deck, the rhythm of waves underfoot. For a moment, her hands paused. She finished the net and returned it to Raphael. He thanked her and left. That night, Maribel sat by her window longer than usual. The sea was calm. The boats rocked gently. She realized that she had been holding something back all these years. Not deliberately, not consciously. She'd been holding herself away from the water, as if distance could preserve what was lost. The next morning, she walked down to the harbor early. She did not have a plan. She simply stood at the edge, watching the tide move in and out. A fisherman she recognized nodded to her. "It's quiet today," he said. "Yes," Maribel replied. She did not step onto a boat. She did not return to the work she had left. She simply stood there, letting the sea be the sea, without asking anything of it. Later, as she walked back home, she felt a lightness that surprised her. Not joy exactly, and not sorrow. Something simpler. The feeling of no longer keeping herself braced. In this story, letting go does not mean returning to the past or undoing loss. It means releasing the effort to protect oneself from what has already happened. Sometimes, we hold on not to things, but to distances. We keep ourselves away from certain feelings, places, or memories, believing that the holding itself is what keeps us steady. But holding can also keep us tense. Maribel did not decide to stop missing Inigo. She did not resolve her grief. She simply stopped holding herself away from the sea. And in that small letting go, something softened. We often think that letting go must be dramatic, that it involves confrontation, forgiveness, or closure. But often, it looks like this instead. A quiet return to something ordinary, without expectation. Standing by the water, watching the tide, allowing what is already here. As listeners in the night, we may notice similar distances in ourselves, places we no longer go, thoughts we avoid, feelings we keep at arm's length, not because we are wrong to do so, but because at some point it seemed necessary. Letting go does not mean crossing those distances immediately. It may simply mean noticing that they are there and noticing the effort it takes to maintain them. Sometimes, when that effort relaxes, even slightly, there is room to breathe. Another story arrives now, from a quieter interior place. far from water and travel. In a town where the streets were narrow and the houses close together, there lived a schoolteacher named Tomasz. He taught children to read and write, and he took his work seriously. Each lesson was prepared carefully. Each mistake was noted and corrected. Tomasz believed that learning depended on precision. Words mattered. Errors mattered. He carried this belief home with him, reviewing the day's lessons in his mind long after the classroom was empty. One year, a new student arrived, a girl named Eleni. She was attentive but slow. Her letters wandered across the page. Her reading stumbled. Tomasz worked with her patiently, repeating instructions, pointing out mistakes. Progress came, but slowly. One afternoon, after class, Tomasz found Eleni sitting alone, looking at a book she was not assigned. He asked what she was doing. "I like the pictures," she said. "They are not for reading," Tomasz replied, more sharply than he intended. Eleni closed the book and nodded. She put it away carefully. That evening, Tomasz thought about the moment. He could not say why it stayed with him. He had done nothing unusual. He had corrected a student, as he always did. The next day, he watched Eleni more closely. She followed along, but something in her had withdrawn. Her hand hesitated before writing. Her eyes flicked up to him, then down again. Tomasz felt a quiet discomfort. Weeks later, during a holiday, Tomasz visited his sister. She had children of her own, and the house was loud and disordered. Papers were scattered. Books lay open and half read. The children drew pictures and left them unfinished. At first, Tomasz felt uneasy. Then, as the days passed, he noticed something else. The children moved easily from one activity to another. They did not cling to mistakes. They laughed when things went wrong. One evening, his sister said, "You are always holding on so tightly." Tomasz did not argue. He knew it was true. When he returned to his classroom, he tried something small. When Eleni made a mistake, he did not correct it immediately. He waited. He watched what she would do. Sometimes, she noticed and fixed it herself. Sometimes, she did not. The lesson continued. Over time, Tomasz found that he was less tired at the end of the day. The lessons were still taught. The children still learned. But the constant tension of correction had eased. Here, letting go appeared as a loosening of control, not abandoning responsibility, but releasing the belief that everything must be held, monitored, and fixed in every moment. Many of us carry this belief quietly. We think that if we do not stay vigilant, things will fall apart, and sometimes vigilance is needed. But often, it becomes a habit long after the situation that required it has passed. Letting go, in this sense, is not carelessness. It is trust. Trust that not everything needs our immediate grip. As we listen now, perhaps our own vigilance is resting. We are not checking for meaning. We are not correcting our thoughts. We are letting the words come and go. This, too, is a form of letting go. The night supports it naturally. There is less to do, less to respond to, less to hold together. We can allow the stories to drift, like Maribel by the harbor, like Annika on the road, like Matteo at his wheel. Each one releases something different. Each one discovers that life continues quietly, without collapse. If sleep arrives in the middle of a sentence, that is not a loss. It is the teaching completing itself in its own way. And if listening continues, that is fine too. We remain here together, moving gently from one life to another, letting go again and again, not as an act, but as a natural easing, carried by the night itself. The night continues to open, not forward, but outward. The stories do not line up behind one another. They simply appear, like lights seen from a distance, each steady in its own place. There is a memory now of a man named Haruto who lived in land where the land rose gently and the fields stretched wide. Haruto repaired clocks. People brought him small ticking worlds wrapped in cloth, and he opened them carefully, laying their parts out on a felt mat. Gears, springs, hands, each had its place. Haruto was known for his patience. He did not rush repairs. If a clock resisted him, he would set it aside and return the next day. Most of the time, this was enough. But there was one clock he could not restore. It belonged to a woman named Keiko, who had inherited it from her father. It had stopped suddenly, without warning, and no amount of careful work brought it back to life. Haruto cleaned it, adjusted it, replaced parts that had worn thin. Still, it remained silent. Keiko visited often. She never complained. She simply asked if there was any change. Haruto felt a growing pressure. This clock mattered to her. It mattered because it carried time that could not be replaced. He worked longer hours. He skipped meals. He listened for sounds that never came. One evening, as the sun fell low, Haruto sat alone with the open clock before him. His hands were steady, but his shoulders ached. He realized that he had stopped listening to the room. The quiet was no longer calm. It was tense. He closed the clock and wrapped it carefully. The next day, when Keiko arrived, he handed it back to her. "I cannot repair this," he said. Keiko nodded. She held the clock against her chest. "Thank you for trying," she replied. After she left, Haruto felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. The problem was no longer in his care. The responsibility had lifted, but so had the sense of purpose it had given him. That night, he slept deeply for the first time in weeks. In the days that followed, he noticed something subtle. Other clocks seemed easier to repair. His attention was softer, less strained. He worked with care, but without the urgency that had crept in unnoticed. Here, letting go took the shape of admitting a limit. This can be one of the most difficult forms. To say, quietly, "I cannot do this," without turning it into failure or blame. To set something down, not because we are finished, but because holding it is no longer helping anyone. We often believe that perseverance means never letting go. But there is another kind of perseverance, one that includes knowing when to release what cannot be carried further. Haruto did not abandon his craft. He simply stopped forcing himself beyond what was possible. As we listen, perhaps there are clocks in our own lives, situations we keep returning to, convinced that one more adjustment will make them work. Letting go here does not mean we never cared. It means we care enough to stop causing harm through effort alone. Another life enters the night now, quieter still. In a forest village, where paths curved gently and the trees were old, there lived a woman named Mirella. She gathered herbs and roots, drying them in bundles outside her door. People came to her for remedies, and she offered what she could. Mirella listened carefully to those who visited. She asked where pain lived in the body, how long it had stayed, what made it better or worse. She believed that being heard was part of healing. But Mirella carried her own pain, one she did not speak of. Years earlier, she had lost a child. The grief had settled into her like a stone. She learned to move around it, to work despite it, to smile when needed. One afternoon, a young mother named Alina came with her child, who was restless and feverish. Mirella prepared a simple remedy and spoke softly as the child drank it. As Alina watched, she said, "You must have children. You are very gentle." Mirella felt the familiar tightening. She paused, then said, "I had one." Alina nodded, unsure what to say. The moment passed. That evening, as Mirella walked the forest paths, she noticed how carefully she had been holding her grief. keeping it contained, hidden, controlled. She had believed that letting it show would overwhelm her or others. She sat on a fallen log and rested her hands on her knees. The forest was quiet. Birds moved above her. The stone in her chest felt heavy, but steady. For the first time in many years, she did not push the feeling away. She did not shape it into something manageable. She simply allowed it to be present, without comment. Tears came, briefly, then stopped. Nothing dramatic followed. The forest did not change. The pain did not vanish. But something softened. In the days that followed, Mirella found that she spoke more easily when memories arose. She did not dwell in them, but she did not hide them either. The grief remained, but the effort of holding it back had eased. Letting go here did not mean forgetting. It meant releasing the constant guarding. Sometimes, we hold on to pain because we believe it honors what was lost. And in some way, it does. But holding tightly is not the only form of care. Allowing pain to breathe can be another. As listeners, we may feel echoes of this. Feelings we keep carefully contained. Stories we tell ourselves about what would happen if we stopped managing them. Letting go does not demand exposure. It does not require sharing or explanation. It may simply be the moment when we stop bracing. The night is kind to these moments. It asks little. It does not watch closely. Another story unfolds now, lighter in tone, but no less gentle. There was a baker named Roland who rose before dawn each day. He kneaded dough by feel, not by measure, trusting the warmth of his hands. His bread was simple and well loved. Roland had a habit of saving the end of each loaf, the heel. He believed it was wasteful to throw it away, and over time, the heels accumulated in a basket. He told himself he would use them for soup or crumbs. Weeks passed. The basket filled. One morning, as he reached for a new loaf, the basket tipped, and the stale heels spilled across the floor. Roland stood there, looking at them. They were dry, hard, unappealing. He laughed softly. He gathered them and fed them to the birds outside his shop. The birds came quickly, pecking and fluttering. The basket was empty. From that day on, Roland saved no heels. This is a small story, almost nothing, and yet it carries something familiar. We often keep things just in case, ideas, habits, belongings, even identities. They accumulate quietly. We tell ourselves they may be useful someday. Letting go here is not dramatic. It is practical. It notices what has already lost its use. The birds eat. The basket is empty. The morning continues. As the night deepens further, we may feel ourselves loosening in similar ways. Thoughts we were holding lightly drift off. Others lose their sharp edges. The need to make sense of everything fades. This fading is not loss. It is rest. We are not required to track these stories or remember their details. They are passing through, doing their work without asking permission. If attention wanders, it wanders. If sleep thickens, it thickens. If listening remains, it remains. Letting go does not have a single shape. Sometimes it is a decision. Sometimes it is a realization. Sometimes it is simply the body saying, "Enough for now." And as the night carries on, it offers countless opportunities for this gentle easing, not once, but again and again, in small ways that barely announce themselves. We continue together, held not by effort, but by the quiet rhythm of stories unfolding and dissolving, like waves that reach the shore and return without leaving a trace. The night has settled into a deeper stillness now. The edges of thought soften. Stories arrive more slowly, as if they, too, are unburdening themselves of any need to impress or persuade. There is a place we can visit next, a wide plain where the sky feels close and the wind is rarely still. A man named Oleg lived there, tending a small flock of sheep. His days followed a steady rhythm. He walked the same paths, opened the same gates, watched the same hills change color with the seasons. Oleg had once wanted something else. In his younger years, he imagined leaving the plains, learning a trade, making a name for himself in a larger town. He carried these thoughts with him like a private fire, warming and agitating him at the same time. As years passed, the fire cooled, but never fully went out. Sometimes, when the sky was especially clear, Oleg felt the old restlessness stir. He wondered what his life might have been. One afternoon, a storm rolled in quickly. The wind rose, and the sheep grew uneasy. Oleg moved among them, guiding them toward lower ground. Rain came hard, flattening the grass, blurring the horizon. When the storm passed, Oleg stood soaked and tired. The flock gathered safely nearby. The air was clean. the land smelled of wet earth. In that moment, he noticed something unexpected. The restlessness was gone, not pushed away, not argued with, simply absent. It returned at other times, but Oleg no longer took it as seriously. He recognized it as a passing weather, not a direction. Here, letting go was not a permanent release. It was a momentary one, a brief freedom that showed him something important. We often believe that letting go must be final, that once we release something, it should never return. But this is rarely how it happens. Old desires resurface. Old habits reappear. Old questions ask themselves again. Letting go does not prevent this. It changes how we relate to it. Oleg did not stop imagining other lives. He stopped believing those imaginings required action. As listeners, we may feel this too. Thoughts come and go. Longings appear and fade. Letting go does not mean eliminating them. It means not being carried away each time they arise. Another story takes shape now, quieter, closer to home. In a small courtyard surrounded by stone walls, there lived a woman named Sabine. She kept the space tidy, sweeping it each morning, watering a single tree at its center. Sabine had a habit of counting. She counted steps as she walked, counted cups as she stacked them, counted the days between visits from her sister. The counting gave her a sense of order. It made time feel manageable. One day, while sweeping, she lost count. A bird startled her, and the number slipped away. She stood still, broom in hand, trying to remember where she had left off. She felt a brief surge of irritation. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed. She finished sweeping without counting. That afternoon, she noticed how quiet her mind felt. The day moved differently, less segmented. She forgot to count again and again, each time noticing only after the fact. By evening, she felt a gentle fatigue, but also a lightness. The day had unfolded without being measured. Counting returned in the following days. Habits rarely disappear at once. But Sabine had glimpsed another way of being with time, one that did not require constant tracking. Letting go here was accidental. It came through interruption, not intention. Sometimes, we let go not because we choose to, but because something distracts us, startles us, or simply wears us down. And in that gap, we discover we were holding something unnecessarily. As the night continues, interruptions may come in similar ways. A sound outside, a shift in position, a fragment of a dream beginning to form. These are not disturbances, they are openings. Another life appears now, marked by patience and repetition. There was a gardener named Yusuf who tended a walled garden for a large household. He planted, pruned, watered, and waited. His work followed the seasons closely. He knew when not to act. Yusuf took pride in his garden. He noticed small changes others missed. He adjusted soil, protected shoots from frost, guided vines gently along their supports. One year, a plant he cherished began to fail. Its leaves yellowed. Its growth slowed. Yusuf tried everything he knew. He adjusted light, water, nutrients. Nothing helped. He watched it each day, concern tightening his chest. The garden, once a place of ease, became a place of worry. One morning, Yusuf arrived to find the plant had died overnight. He stood silently, then knelt and removed it, roots and all. The space it left was bare. Days passed. Yusuf continued his work. The empty space remained. Then, without planning it, he planted something else there, a different species, one he had never grown before. It flourished. Yusuf did not tell this story to anyone. He did not frame it as a lesson. He simply carried the memory of how the garden felt lighter once the struggle ended. Letting go here came through loss, not choice. And yet, something new emerged. Not because Yusuf forced it, but because space had been made. We often fear the emptiness that follows letting go. We imagine it will remain empty forever. But emptiness is rarely static. It is receptive. As we listen now, perhaps we feel spaces opening within us, gaps where attention fades, moments where we are not holding a thought or following a story. These spaces are not failures of listening. They are part of the rhythm. Another story drifts in, softer still. A woman named Renata lived alone near a crossroads. Travelers sometimes stopped to rest or ask directions. Renata offered water and pointed the way. She liked the crossroads. It felt honest to her. Paths met and parted without argument. Renata had once been married. After her partner left, she remained in the same place, answering the same questions from passers-by. Which way is the river? How far to the next town? She answered clearly, without embellishment. One day, a traveler asked, "Why do you stay here?" Renata considered the question. "I like knowing where things go," she said. Later, she reflected on this. She realized that for a long time, she had stayed because leaving felt like another loss. Remaining felt safer. Over time, this softened. She still stayed, but without the weight of justification. The crossroads became a place she chose, not a place she hid. Letting go here was subtle. It was the release of a story she had been telling herself about why she stayed. We all carry such stories. They explain our choices, protect us from regret, give shape to our past. Letting go does not erase these stories. It loosens our grip on them. They become narratives, not prisons. As the night deepens further, the mind may begin to blur the edges of these stories. Names may fade. Details may soften. This is natural. The teaching of letting go does not depend on clarity. It depends on allowing stories to come, allowing them to leave, allowing ourselves to rest in between. We are not trying to reach an understanding. We are simply staying with this gentle movement, over and over, as it happens in many lives and quietly in our own. If sleep has already arrived, these words are passing by like wind through grass. If listening continues, that too is fine. The night does not require a response. It continues whether we notice it or not, offering countless small invitations to set things down, to stop holding for a while, to trust that what needs to continue will continue on its own. And so, we remain here together, moving deeper into the quiet, carried not by effort or intention, but by the natural easing that comes when holding is no longer needed, and letting go happens all by itself. The night now feels wider than before, as if it has stretched to make room for everything we are no longer carrying. The stories arrive with even less urgency. They do not ask to be followed. They simply pass through, like slow clouds. There is a small town we can rest in for a while, where the streets were laid long ago and changed very little over time. A man named Gianni lived there, running a modest shop that sold paper, ink, and simple notebooks. He opened the shop each morning, swept the floor, arranged the items just so. He liked order. It made the day feel predictable. Gianni had once dreamed of being a writer. When he was younger, he filled notebooks with ideas, beginnings of stories, lines he believed were important. Over time, the notebooks filled shelves in the back of the shop. Customers sometimes noticed them and asked if they were for sale. Gianni always said no. At night, after closing, he would sit among the shelves and read what he had written years before. Some passages pleased him, others embarrassed him. Many felt distant, as if written by someone else. One evening, as he read, he realized he was holding these notebooks, not because they still mattered, but because letting them go felt like letting go of who he had been. The thought stayed with him. Weeks later, during a slow afternoon, Gianni brought a box to the back room. He did not rush. He placed the notebooks inside one by one. He did not reread them. He simply noticed their weight as he lifted each. When the box was full, he carried it to the front of the shop and placed it near the door with a small sign, "Free." He felt a brief tightness in his chest, then a release so gentle it surprised him. By the end of the day, the box was empty. That night, Gianni closed the shop and sat quietly. He did not feel loss. He did not feel triumph. He felt space. Here, letting go was not about abandoning a dream. It was about releasing the need to preserve a version of the past. We often keep objects, ideas, or memories, not because they serve us now, but because they reassure us that our past was real, meaningful, intact. Letting go can feel like erasure, but as Gianni discovered, letting go can also feel like trust. Trust that who we were does not disappear when we stop holding evidence of it. As listeners, we may sense similar shelves within us, things we revisit not because they nourish us, but because they are familiar. Letting go here is not rejection. It is acknowledgement that we are no longer the same person we were when we first held them. Another life appears, simpler still. In a farming village, there lived a woman named Noura, who collected water each day from a well at the edge of the fields. She carried 2 buckets, one in each hand, walking the same path morning and evening. Noura was strong, but she was also careful. She adjusted her pace to keep the buckets balanced. She believed that spilling water was careless. One day, a crack appeared in one of the buckets. At first, it leaked only a little. Noura noticed, but continued to use it. She adjusted her grip, her pace, her attention. Over time, the leak worsened. Water spilled along the path, darkening the earth. Noura felt frustrated. She tightened her hold, walked more slowly. Still, the water leaked. Finally, one morning, she noticed something. Along the path where the water spilled, small plants had begun to grow. The soil there was greener, softer, She continued to use the cracked bucket until it broke completely. When it did, she replaced it. But she remembered the path. Here, letting go did not happen immediately. It happened after noticing that even what was being lost was not wasted. Sometimes, we hold tightly because we believe that any loss is failure. Letting go can begin when we see that loss, too, has its place. As we listen now, perhaps we can feel the mind loosening its grip on details. Words blur slightly. The effort to follow eases. This is not inattention. It is a natural response to safety. When there is nothing to fix, nothing to decide, the mind rests. Another story comes, almost like a whisper. A man named Stefan lived near a lake. Each evening, he walked its shore, skipping stones across the water. He tried to make them travel far, counting the skips. Some days, the stones skipped well. Other days, they sank quickly. Stefan blamed the stones, the water, his hand. One evening, tired, he threw a stone without care. It skipped once, then sank. He did not count. He realized he did not need to. From that day on, he still threw stones, but without counting. Some skipped, some did not. The lake remained the same. This story barely asks anything of us. It simply shows a small letting go of measurement. How often do we count progress, count successes, count the ways things should have gone differently? Counting can be useful, but it can also keep us tense. Letting go of counting, even briefly, can reveal that nothing essential has been lost. As the night deepens, counting becomes difficult anyway. Numbers fade. Time stretches. This is one of the quiet gifts of night. It loosens our attachment to sequence and outcome. Another life, another gentle release. In a hillside village, there lived an old woman named Katya who knitted scarves. She gave them away freely, never selling them. People wore them until they frayed. Katya kept no record of who received which scarf. She did not ask to see them again. She did not track whether they were used or lost. Someone once asked her why. She shrugged. "The yarn passes through my hands," she said. Here, letting go is complete. There is no expectation at all. Most of us are not ready for this kind of letting go, and we do not need to be. It exists simply as a possibility, a distant horizon. We can appreciate it without moving toward it. As listeners, we may feel our own expectations softening, the expectation to understand, the expectation to remember, the expectation to stay awake. All of these can be set down. The stories do not require us. They continue regardless. If sleep has come, then letting go has already happened in the most natural way possible. If listening continues, it is likely gentler now, less focused, more like drifting. The night holds both states equally. We continue together in this easing, allowing words to arrive and dissolve, allowing meaning to loosen its grip, allowing the simple fact of being here to be enough. Nothing more is needed. Nothing has to be carried further. The night knows how to continue on its own. The night has reached a point where it no longer feels like it is moving at all. It is simply present, wide and steady, holding whatever remains of our attention without asking anything in return. Another story comes now, unhurried. In a town built along a slow river, there lived a ferryman named Lucian. Each day, he guided his boat back and forth, carrying people across the water. Some crossings were lively, filled with conversation. Others passed in silence, the sound of the oars dipping into the river marking the time. Lucian had been a ferryman for many years. He knew the currents well. He knew where the river was shallow, where it deepened unexpectedly. He took pride in bringing everyone across safely. One evening, as the light faded, a man named Adrian stepped into the boat. He looked troubled, his gaze fixed on the water. Lucian pushed off and began rowing. Halfway across, Adrian spoke. "I don't know why I'm telling you this," he said. "I'm leaving my home. I don't know if I'll return." Lucian nodded, not turning around. Adrian continued, speaking of regrets, of choices that felt wrong no matter which way he turned. Lucian listened, steadying the boat against a gentle current. When they reached the far shore, Adrian stepped out and thanked him. He walked away without looking back. Lucian remained in the boat for a moment, holding the oars loosely. He realized that he carried many such stories across the river each day. People entered his boat heavy with thoughts and stepped out lighter, not because he had solved anything, but because the crossing had ended. Lucian did not follow them. He did not keep their stories. He simply returned across the river, ready for the next crossing. Here, letting go is woven into the work itself. Stories arrive, stay briefly, and are released naturally. Many of us do the opposite. We collect what was never meant to be carried. Conversations linger. Other people's worries become our own. We replay them, analyze them, try to complete what was never ours to finish. Letting go can be as simple as noticing when the crossing is complete. The boat has reached the shore. The story has been told. The moment has passed. Nothing needs to be taken further. As we listen now, perhaps the mind is doing something similar. Thoughts arise, drift for a while, then step off quietly, without ceremony. Another story surfaces, gentler still. In a quiet neighborhood, there lived a man named Henri who repaired umbrellas. His shop was small, with little light. Most days were slow. People rarely thought about umbrellas unless it was raining. Henri enjoyed the simplicity of his work. He replaced ribs, stitched fabric, tested the opening and closing. Each repair was small, contained. One afternoon, during a heavy rain, customers lined up outside his shop. Henri worked steadily, but he felt rushed. He hurried his hands, anxious to help everyone. In his haste, he made a mistake. An umbrella jammed, its mechanism bent beyond repair. Henri paused. He closed the shop door briefly, despite the waiting line. He sat down and breathed quietly, though he did not think of it as breathing. He simply stopped. When he reopened the door, he returned the broken umbrella to its owner and apologized. The owner shrugged. It was old. He said, "I should have replaced it anyway." Henri returned to his work, slower now. Letting go here was the release of urgency, the belief that everything must be fixed immediately, perfectly. We often rush, not because the situation demands it, but because we are uncomfortable with waiting, with limits, with disappointing others. Letting go does not mean refusing responsibility. It means releasing the pressure we add on top of what is already required. As the night continues, urgency has little place. There is nowhere to go. Nothing needs to be completed. Another life appears, almost dreamlike. A woman named Aliska lived near a cliff overlooking the sea. Each morning, she walked the path along the edge, watching waves crash far below. She carried with her a small pouch of smooth stones, collected over the years. At each visit, she chose one stone and held it for a while, thinking of something she wanted to release. Then, she threw the stone into the sea and listened for the sound. At first, this felt meaningful. The sound of the splash seemed to mark a letting go. Over time, however, Aliska noticed that she was choosing heavier stones, throwing them harder, listening more intently, the ritual began to feel strained. One morning, she arrived without her pouch. She stood by the cliff, empty-handed. The sea moved as it always had. She stayed for a while, then turned and walked home. From that day on, she still visited the cliff, but she carried nothing. She no longer marked her letting go. It happened without ceremony. Sometimes, rituals help us release. Sometimes, we hold on to the ritual itself. Letting go includes letting go of how we think. Letting go should look. As listeners, we may notice that earlier stories felt clearer, more defined. Now, the edges blur. This is not a problem. It is part of the descent into rest. Another story comes, barely formed. There was a librarian named Marcus who worked in a building filled with old books. He loved the smell of paper, the quiet weight of knowledge around him. Marcus believed that books should be preserved carefully. He repaired bindings, controlled humidity, monitored light. He wanted nothing to be lost. One winter, a pipe burst. Water flooded a section of the library. Several books were damaged beyond saving. Marcus felt a deep sadness. He held one ruined book in his hands, pages swollen, ink blurred. An older colleague named Irene stood beside him. "Some things end," she said. Marcus nodded, though the words did not comfort him immediately. Over time, he noticed something else. New books arrived. Readers continued to come. The library remained alive. The loss did not stop the flow. Letting go here was not acceptance at first. It was endurance. It was allowing time to do what words could not. Sometimes, letting go takes longer than we want. It does not respond to understanding alone. It requires patience. As the night holds us, patience is abundant. There is no timeline, no expectation. We can let go of the need to let go. Another life drifts by. A child named Nomi learned to ride a bicycle late. She was cautious, holding the handlebars tightly, pedaling stiffly. Her parent ran beside her, steadying the seat. One day, without realizing it, the parent let go. Nomi rode a few feet on her own before wobbling to a stop. She looked back, surprised. Then she laughed. This letting go was mutual. One released, and the other discovered balance. Often, we are held by things we do not realize are supporting us. Letting go reveals what remains when support shifts. As listeners, perhaps we are noticing that the voice, the rhythm, the continuity of the night is holding us. We do not need to hold ourselves. Another story, quieter still. An old man named Pavel lived near a train line. Each evening, he sat on his porch as trains passed, counting the cars. One evening, he fell asleep mid-count. When he woke, the train was gone. He did not try to remember how many cars had passed. From then on, he listened without counting. Here, letting go arrives through sleep itself. And this is perhaps the most natural form of all. Sleep lets go for us. It loosens what we cannot. It releases effort without discussion. If sleep is arriving now, then the teaching is complete in its own way. If listening continues, it does so gently, without sharp edges. The night does not demand understanding. It does not reward effort. It simply offers a space where holding becomes unnecessary. We can rest here together in this wide quiet, allowing stories to thin out, allowing attention to soften, allowing the simple fact of being carried by the night to be enough. Nothing needs to be done. Nothing needs to be remembered. Letting go is already happening. Quietly, naturally, as the night continues on its own. The night feels almost transparent now, as if we are listening through it rather than within it. The words move more slowly, and the spaces between them grow longer. Nothing is being built. Nothing is being resolved. Another life appears, gently. In a village where the road curved away into fields, there lived a man named Eamon who repaired shoes. His shop smelled of leather and polish. He worked seated on a low stool, bent slightly forward, his hands steady and practiced. Eamon believed in durability. He chose strong thread, reinforced weak seams, and took pride in making shoes last longer than expected. People trusted him with boots worn thin by years of walking. Eamon himself wore the same pair of shoes for a long time. He repaired them again and again, adding patches, replacing soles. They fit his feet perfectly. He could not imagine wearing anything else. One day, after a long walk, he noticed a pain in his foot. He examined the shoe and found that despite all his care, it had warped. The shape no longer matched his foot. He repaired it, as he always did. The pain remained. Finally, reluctantly, Eamon set the shoes aside and bought a new pair. They felt strange at first, too stiff, too unfamiliar. But the pain faded. Eamon kept the old shoes on a shelf in his shop for a while. Then, one evening, he gave them to a traveler passing through. He did not watch the traveler leave. Here, letting go is practical. It does not require reflection or symbolism. It comes when something that once fit no longer does. We often continue repairing what has already changed beyond repair, not because it still serves us, but because we are accustomed to its shape. Letting go here is simply choosing what allows us to walk without pain. As the night continues, perhaps some familiar shapes in our own lives feel less necessary to maintain. The effort to keep them in place eases. Another story drifts in. In a quiet apartment overlooking a courtyard, there lived a woman named Isolde, who listened to the radio each night before sleeping. She preferred talk programs, voices speaking steadily about ordinary things. One evening, the signal crackled and faded. Static filled the room. Isolde adjusted the dial, but the voices did not return. She sat in the quiet for a while, irritated at first. Then she noticed the sounds that replaced the radio. A distant car, someone closing a window, the hum of the building itself. She turned the radio off. From then on, some nights she listened, and some nights she did not. The silence no longer felt empty. Letting go here was the release of constant input, the belief that something must always be filling the space. As listeners, we may notice that the words are no longer filling every corner of attention. Silence weaves itself in naturally. This is not a loss of connection. It is a deepening of it. Another life, almost weightless. A fisherman named Luca lived on a narrow strip of land between river and sea. Each morning, he checked his nets. Some days were good. Some were not. Luca had learned not to measure his worth by the size of the catch. He had tried once, and it made him restless. One morning, he found his nets empty. He shrugged, coiled them, and sat by the water, watching the light change. Nothing needed to be explained. Letting go here is the absence of reaction. Sometimes, letting go is not doing anything at all. Another story appears, barely forming words. A seamstress named Clara sewed quietly by a window. She used what fabric was available. When thread ran out, she tied it carefully and continued. She did not save scraps. She did not plan future projects. She worked with what was in front of her. People asked her how she decided what to make. "I don't decide," she said. "I see what's there." Letting go here is trust in the present moment, without naming it. As we listen now, the present moment does not need to be defined. It is simply here, carrying us. Another life, fading in and out. An old couple, Marta and Joseph, walked the same path each evening. They spoke little. Some days, not at all. One evening, Joseph walked more slowly. Marta matched his pace without comment. Letting go here is silent adjustment. No discussion, no resistance. Sometimes, letting go is kindness. Another story, thinner still. A bell ringer named Theo rang the church bell each morning. One day, he forgot. Nothing happened. The day continued. He remembered later and smiled. Here, letting go is discovering that what we believed was essential was simply habitual. As the night deepens further, habits loosen on their own. The mind stops checking. The body settles without instruction. We are not moving toward sleep. Sleep may already be happening, or it may not. Either way, nothing is wrong. Another life drifts past, almost without substance. A woman named Yara watched clouds from her balcony. She tried once to name them, to classify their shapes. She stopped when the names fell away faster than she could assign them. Now she watched without naming. The sky remained. Letting go here is letting language rest. As listeners, we may notice that meaning itself is becoming less important. Words arrive and dissolve without being held. This is not confusion. It is simplicity. Another story, barely audible. A watchman named Ivo sat through the night, guarding a gate no one used anymore. At some point, he realized nothing was coming. He stayed anyway, but without tension. Letting go here is releasing vigilance while remaining present. As the night continues, vigilance fades naturally. There is nothing to watch for. Another life appears, then fades. A child named Lena held a balloon. She let go accidentally. It rose into the sky. She watched until it disappeared. She did not cry. Sometimes, letting go happens before we decide how to feel about it. And sometimes, there is no feeling at all. As we move deeper into the night, the stories thin, like mist lifting from a field. What remains is not emptiness, but ease. We are no longer following narratives. We are resting in their passing. If sleep is present now, then these words are already part of a dream, or not heard at all. If listening continues, it is loose, unburdened, without demand. The night does not ask us to arrive anywhere. It does not ask us to understand. It simply continues, wide and gentle, carrying everything that no longer needs to be held. And in this continuing, letting go is no longer something we do. It is simply what is happening. The night is now so settled that it barely feels like night at all. It is more like a wide pause, a long exhale that never quite finishes. The stories arrive as if from far away, and even as they arrive, they are already leaving. There is a place near a wide marsh where the ground is soft and the air carries the scent of water and reeds. There lived a man named Florian who watched birds. Florian did not keep records. He did not count species or note migrations in a book. He simply stood for long periods, leaning on a wooden fence, watching birds rise and settle again. When he was younger, he had tried to learn their names. He memorized charts, listened to recordings, but the names slipped away faster than he could hold them. Eventually, he stopped trying. One afternoon, a visitor asked him, "What kind of bird is that?" Florian looked for a moment. "I don't know," he said. The visitor seemed surprised. "But you watch them all the time." Florian nodded. "Yes." The bird lifted into the air and disappeared into the reeds. Here, letting go is quiet and complete. Knowledge is not rejected. It is simply not clung to. The watching remains. We often believe that understanding requires naming, categorizing, holding things firmly in the mind. But sometimes, understanding deepens when we allow those structures to fall away. As listeners, perhaps we are no longer holding on to the sequence of stories. They blend, overlap, dissolve. This is not a loss of attention. It is a widening of it. Another life moves gently into view. In a coastal town, there lived a woman named Teresa who ran a small guest house. She prepared rooms, washed sheets, greeted travelers politely. People stayed one night, sometimes two, and then left. Teresa used to ask where they were going next. She liked to imagine their journeys continuing. Over time, she noticed that she was collecting these imagined paths, carrying them with her. One day, after a long season, she stopped asking. She still smiled. She still wished people well. But when they left, their stories left with them. Teresa slept more easily after that. Letting go here is the release of imagined responsibility, the belief that we must carry the trajectories of others. Even briefly, we can care without carrying. The night supports this distinction naturally. We are together here, but we are not responsible for one another's thoughts or sleep. Each of us is carried by the same quiet. Another story appears, slower still. In a city apartment, there lived a man named Nikolai who sorted old photographs. Boxes of them filled his closets. He spent evenings organizing them by date, by place, by the people in them. Some photographs he lingered over, others he passed quickly. One night, tired, he dropped a stack. The photographs scattered across the floor. He sat down among them, suddenly uninterested in sorting them back. He noticed that without order, the images felt lighter. They were moments, not sequences. Nikolai gathered them into a single box without sorting and put the box away. He did not return to it. Letting go here is the release of narrative, the need to arrange the past into a coherent story. The past exists whether or not we organize it. As listeners, we may feel our own narratives loosening. The story of today, the story of who we are while listening. These stories can rest for a while. Another life drifts in, nearly silent. A man named Reuben worked night shifts cleaning office buildings. He moved through empty rooms, wiping desks, emptying bins. The work was repetitive and quiet. At first, Reuben filled the silence with thoughts. He planned, worried, replayed conversations. Over time, the thoughts thinned. The work remained. He found that he preferred it this way. Letting go here is not an action. It is a gradual fading of mental noise when it is no longer fed. The night invites this naturally. There is little to stimulate, little to respond to. Another story appears, soft and brief. A woman named Hannah lived near a train station. Each night, she heard the late train pass. At first, the sound disturbed her. She waited for it, tensed against it. One night, exhausted, she fell asleep before it came. After that, she stopped listening for it. The train continued. Letting go here is discovering that anticipation was the real disturbance. As listeners, perhaps anticipation has eased. We are not waiting for the next story, the next idea, the next moment. We are simply here. Another life, barely outlined. A carpenter named Emile built tables. He sanded them smooth, careful with edges. He used to run his hands over them repeatedly, checking for flaws. One day, he stopped after the first pass. The table held. He never returned to excessive checking. Letting go here is releasing unnecessary assurance. as the night deepens, checking becomes difficult anyway. We stop verifying whether we are awake or asleep, listening or drifting. The need to know fades. Another story comes like a breath. A woman named Lotta collected shells. She arranged them on shelves by size and color. One day, a shelf collapsed. The shells fell and mixed. She left them that way. From then on, she enjoyed them more. Letting go here is releasing control over arrangement. Another life appears, almost weightless. A monk named Siren swept the courtyard each morning. Leaves fell again by afternoon. He swept again the next day. One day, he noticed he was no longer annoyed by the leaves. He did not tell anyone. Letting go here is quiet acceptance without declaration. As listeners, acceptance may be happening without our noticing. The acceptance of being tired. The acceptance of drifting. The acceptance of not following every word. Another story, faint. A musician named Paul tuned his instrument before playing. One evening, he forgot. The music was still music. Letting go here is realizing perfection was never required. As the night stretches on, perfection loses its meaning. There is no performance here, no standard. Another life drifts past. A woman named Mirek waited for a letter that never arrived. One day, she stopped checking the mailbox. Life continued. Letting go here is releasing expectation. Expectation is tiring. The night asks nothing of the future. Another story, almost nothing. A man named Jonas kept his phone on the table at night, face up. One evening, the battery died. He slept better. Letting go here is accidental and kind. As listeners, perhaps some internal signal has quieted. The impulse to monitor, to be ready, to respond. Another life, nearly gone. A child named Eva tried to stay awake in the back seat of a car. She watched lights pass. At some point, they blurred. She did not notice falling asleep. Letting go here is the most natural of all. And this is where the night gently leads, without instruction, without effort. The stories are thinning now. They arrive less distinctly, dissolve more quickly. What remains is not emptiness, but a soft continuity. We are no longer holding the thread of the teaching. The teaching is holding us. If sleep is present, then these words are no longer being received as language. They are simply sound, or not even that. If listening continues, it does so without tension, without grasping. The night has no agenda. It does not need to finish. Letting go has become the background condition, no longer a theme, no longer a movement we notice. It is simply the way things are when nothing is being held. And in this wide, quiet space, the night continues on its own, carrying whatever remains of us gently, steadily, without asking us to do anything at all. The night has grown so soft now that even the idea of night feels distant. What remains is a long, even stillness, the kind that does not press in on us, but holds us lightly, the way water holds a leaf without effort. The stories that arrive now are less like stories and more like faint impressions, almost memories, though not quite our own. There is a small house at the edge of a field where a woman named Elise lived alone. Each evening, she lit a lamp and sat by the window. She did not read. She did not knit. She simply sat and watched the light change. When she was younger, Elise used to fill her evenings with tasks, letters to write, things to mend, plans to consider. Over time, those needs fell away one by one. At first, the empty evenings unsettled her. She wondered if she should be doing something, preparing for something. Eventually, the wondering tired her. Now, she sat without asking the evening to be anything other than what it was. Letting go here is so complete that it barely looks like letting go at all. It looks like settling. As listeners, perhaps we are settling too, not into sleep necessarily, but into a state where nothing needs to be adjusted. Another life appears, slow and quiet. In a coastal village, there lived a man named Benoit who repaired small radios. People brought him devices that crackled or fell silent. He opened them carefully, adjusted wires, replaced parts. Sometimes, a radio could not be fixed. At first, Benoit tried anyway. He disliked returning something unfinished. Over time, he noticed that when he pushed beyond what was possible, his hands grew tense and his thoughts narrowed. One day, he stopped trying to fix radios that clearly could not be fixed. He returned them gently, without apology. He slept better after that. Letting go here is the release of obligation beyond reason. We often feel obligated not only to others, but to our own standards, our own ideas of how things should turn out. Letting go can mean loosening those standards just enough to breathe. Another presence drifts in. A woman named Sophia walked the same route through the city each day. She knew every turn, every crack in the pavement. One morning, construction blocked her usual path. She stood for a moment, uncertain. Then she took a different street. The day continued. Later, she realized she had been carrying an invisible map, insisting the day follow it. When the map failed, nothing else did. Letting go here is adapting without protest. As the night deepens, adaptation happens naturally. We are not following a plan. We are simply here. Another life comes softly into view. A man named Thomas lived near a bell tower. Each hour, the bell rang. At first, he noticed every strike. Over time, the sound faded into the background. One night, the bell did not ring. Thomas woke briefly, then slept again. In the morning, he realized he had been listening all along without knowing it. Letting go here is the release of conscious attention. The body listens even when the mind does not. As listeners, we may find that we are still hearing the words, even as we no longer attend to them closely. This is enough. Another story, thinner still. A woman named Farah collected worries. She did not call them that. She called them responsibilities. Each night, she reviewed them one by one before sleeping. One evening, she fell asleep mid-review. In the morning, nothing was lost. From then on, she trusted sleep to do some of the work for her. Letting go here is trusting what happens when we are not managing. The night offers this trust freely. Another life passes quietly. A man named Iker watched the horizon at dusk. He tried once to capture it in a photograph. The colors faded on the screen. He stopped trying. Letting go here is releasing the need to capture. As listeners, perhaps we are no longer trying to capture meaning, to remember phrases, to hold on to insights. They come and go without effort. Another story appears, barely more than a feeling. A woman named Zoya folded laundry each evening. She used to pair socks carefully. One night, she stopped. Nothing changed. Letting go here is trivial, almost invisible, and yet freeing. Another life drifts by. A boy named Anton learned the names of stars from a book. One night, he lay outside and could not remember any of them. He still looked up. Letting go here is allowing wonder without knowledge. As the night holds us, wonder does not need explanation. Another story, almost silent. An old man named Victor sat on a bench each afternoon. He used to think about his life, his choices, his regrets. One day, he simply watched people pass, he did not return to the thinking. Letting go here is releasing rumination. The night is especially kind to this release. Thoughts slow when they are not fed. Another life flickers. A woman named Lena waited for sleep by trying to relax. One night, she forgot to try. Sleep came anyway. Letting go here is letting go of effort itself. As listeners, perhaps effort has already loosened. We are not trying to fall asleep. We are not trying to stay awake. We are simply here. Another story emerges faintly. A painter named Oscar stared at a blank canvas for hours. One evening, he stopped staring and went to bed. The next morning, he painted without hesitation. Letting go here is trusting the pause. The night is a long pause, generous and unhurried. Another life appears, almost without form. A woman named Nadia kept her house spotless. One evening, she left a cup in the sink. She slept well. Letting go here is releasing perfection. As the night deepens, perfection dissolves on its own. There is no standard to meet here. Another story, barely a whisper. A child named Milo counted sheep to fall asleep. He lost count. Sleep arrived. Letting go here is natural and unmarked. And this is how the night continues, not with conclusions, but with soft fade-outs. Stories no longer arrive fully formed. They dissolve as they appear. What remains is a steady quiet, a sense that nothing is required. Nothing is missing. We are no longer holding the theme of letting go. It has already let go of us. If sleep is present now, then these words are passing by like distant weather, not asking to be noticed. If listening continues, it is without tension, without expectation, without effort. The night is doing what it does best. It is carrying us. It is loosening what we did not know we were holding. It is allowing everything unnecessary to fall away on its own time. There is nowhere else to go, nothing else to understand, nothing else to release. The night remains wide and gentle, and whatever remains of us rests easily within it, held without hands, supported without effort, as everything continues exactly as it needs to, quietly, on its own. The night has reached a depth where even words feel optional. They appear, then soften at the edges, as if they, too, are growing tired of being held together. We remain here, not progressing, not returning, simply resting in the long middle of the night. There is a quiet town by a river bend where a woman named Helena lived. Each morning, She opened her window and looked at the water. She did not measure its height or speed. She only noticed whether it was there. When she was younger, Helena used to wonder what the river carried, where it began, where it would end. She imagined following it someday. Years passed, and the questions faded. The river remained. Now, she looked without wondering. Letting go here is the fading of unnecessary curiosity, not the loss of interest, but the release of questions that no longer need answers. As listeners, perhaps our own questions have softened. We are no longer asking what comes next, or whether we are doing this right. We are simply listening, or perhaps not even that. Another life drifts in quietly. A man named Raphael lived above a bakery. Each morning, the smell of bread woke him. At first, he noticed it every day. Later, it became part of the background of his waking. One morning, the smell was absent. The bakery had closed for repairs. Raphael noticed, then returned to sleep. Letting go here is the ease with which change is accepted when we are not clinging to expectation. The night encourages this ease. It asks nothing to remain the same. Another presence appears, faint and gentle. A woman named Minseo kept a journal for many years. Each night, she wrote about her day, her thoughts, her feelings. The pages filled steadily. One evening, she skipped a night. Nothing compelled her to write. She closed the journal and went to bed. The next night, she skipped again. Eventually, the journal stayed closed. Minseo did not decide to stop writing. It simply fell away. Letting go here is not an act of will. It is something that happens when the need dissolves. As listeners, we may notice similar dissolving. The need to track, to note, to process. These needs quiet themselves when there is nothing pushing them forward. Another life moves gently into view. A watchmaker named Leon inspected watches for accuracy. He checked them against a standard clock each day. One afternoon, the standard clock stopped. Leon fixed it quickly, but something had shifted. He realized that for years, he had been aligning everything to a single measure. Without it, the watches still told time. People still arrived when they arrived. Leon checked less often after that. Letting go here is the release of constant comparison. As the night deepens, comparison loses relevance. There is no better or worse way to be here. There is only here. Another story, quieter still. A woman named Priya folded her hands in her lap when she sat. She did it without thinking. One evening, her hands rested apart. She noticed, then forgot. From then on, sometimes her hands folded, sometimes they did not. Letting go here is so small it barely registers. Many of the things we hold are this small. Habits of posture, of thought, of reaction. They loosen naturally when not reinforced. Another life drifts past. A man named Ulrich walked the same loop through a park each day. One afternoon, he took a wrong turn. He discovered a bench he had never seen before. He sat for a while. The next day, he returned to his usual path. Letting go here is allowing deviation without making it a rule. The night is full of such deviations. Attention wanders. Thoughts drift. Sleep comes and goes. Nothing needs to be corrected. Another story emerges faintly. A woman named Carmen kept her phone beside her bed. Each night, she checked it one last time before sleeping. One night, she forgot. Sleep arrived. From then on, forgetting happened more often. Letting go here is discovering that readiness was never required. As listeners, perhaps readiness has softened. We are not prepared for anything. We do not need to be. Another life, almost transparent. A child named Olin listened to rain on the roof. He tried to count the drops. He fell asleep. Letting go here is automatic, kind, unremarkable. Another presence appears. An elderly man named Sergei kept his house very quiet. He turned off clocks, muted appliances. He liked stillness. One night, a distant siren passed. He noticed it, then let it pass. The quiet returned. Letting go here is not resistance to interruption. The night is full of passing sounds, passing sensations. They arrive and leave without altering the whole. Another story, barely formed. A woman named Aiko prepared tea each evening. She warmed the cup, measured the leaves, poured the water carefully. One night, she skipped a step. The tea was still tea. Letting go here is releasing ceremony when it no longer serves. As listeners, perhaps we no longer need the ceremony of listening closely, of following each story. The presence remains even when the form softens. Another life appears, then fades. A man named Thomas kept track of the days by marking a calendar. One evening, he forgot. The next morning came anyway. Letting go here is trusting time. Time does not require our attention to move. Another story, quiet and brief. A woman named Ingrid waited for a bus that was late. She stood for a while, then sat. When the bus arrived, she stood again. Letting go here is releasing impatience. The night is patient by nature. It waits without noticing that it is waiting. Another life drifts through. A painter named Raoul cleaned his brushes carefully after each use. One night, he left them in water and went to bed. They were fine in the morning. Letting go here is learning that care does not always require precision. Another presence appears. A man named Elias watched embers fade in a fireplace. He did not stir them. They faded on their own. Letting go here is allowing natural endings. As the night deepens further, endings happen quietly. Thoughts finish without conclusion. Stories trail off. We are no longer gathering meaning. We are resting in the absence of demand. Another life, nearly gone. A woman named Celine listened to this very kind of quiet once before. She could not remember when. She did not try to. Letting go here is releasing memory itself. As listeners, perhaps we are no longer forming memories of this listening. The night is not meant to be remembered. It is meant to be lived or slept through. Another story, almost nothing. A man named Jacob adjusted his pillow. Then he stopped adjusting it. Sleep came. Letting go here is physical, simple, and kind. The night does not ask us to arrive anywhere else. It does not need us to stay conscious or drift away. Both are welcome. We remain here, not as separate listeners, not as separate stories, but as a shared quiet in which everything that needed to loosen has already begun to loosen. There is no final lesson. There is no conclusion. There is only this gentle continuation, this steady holding without effort, as the night carries on, doing what it has always done, softening edges, easing grips, and allowing everything to rest exactly where it is. The night feels endless in the kindest way, as if it has forgotten how to move forward and decided instead to simply remain. The sense of direction has softened. There is no longer a beginning or a middle, only a wide, patient presence. Stories still appear, but they do not insist on being heard. They drift close, then pass through, like warm air moving across still water. There was once a man named Arturo who lived above a narrow street. Each evening, he opened his window to hear the sounds below. Voices rose and fell. Footsteps echoed briefly, then disappeared. When Arturo was younger, he tried to identify every sound. He matched voices to faces, guessed destinations, imagined conversations continuing beyond his hearing. Over time, the effort grew tiring. Now, He opened the window and listened without identifying. Sound arrived as sound, movement as movement. Letting go here was the release of interpretation. As listeners, we may notice that we are no longer interpreting the words closely. They arrive as rhythm and tone more than meaning. This is not loss. It is rest. Another life moves quietly into view. In a rural clinic, there lived a nurse named Clara who worked long hours. She remembered every patient's name, every concern. She carried their stories home with her, replaying them late into the night. One evening, exhausted, she fell asleep before the thoughts could gather. In the morning, she woke surprised to find she still cared. From then on, she allowed sleep to take some of the burden. Letting go here is trust. Trust that care does not disappear when attention rests. The night supports this kind of trust naturally. Caring continues without effort. Another presence drifts through. A man named Diego polished brass instruments in a quiet workshop. He worked slowly, focusing on the shine, the reflection. At first, he tried to remove every mark. Over time, he noticed that some marks returned no matter how carefully he polished. One day, he stopped trying to erase them all. The instruments still gleamed. Letting go here is acceptance of traces. As listeners, perhaps we are noticing traces of wakefulness, of thought, of awareness. They do not need to be erased. They do not interfere with rest. Another life appears, barely outlined. A woman named Rena prepared meals for her family each day. She worried about balance, nutrition, variety. One evening, she made something simple and familiar. No one complained. She slept well. Letting go here is releasing self-imposed standards. The night is free of standards. It does not evaluate how well we are resting. Another story arrives softly. A man named Pavel stood watch at a lighthouse. The light rotated steadily, cutting through darkness. He used to watch it constantly, making sure it did not falter. Over time, he learned to trust the mechanism. He sat back and listened to the sea. Letting go here is allowing systems to function without supervision. As listeners, perhaps we are no longer supervising ourselves. We are not checking whether we are awake enough, relaxed enough, focused enough. The night holds these things for us. Another life drifts by. A woman named Elvira wrote letters she never sent. She folded them carefully and placed them in a drawer. One day, she stopped writing them. The drawer remained closed. Letting go here is the quiet end of a private ritual. We often maintain rituals long after their purpose has faded. Letting go does not require explanation. Another presence appears, faint and gentle. A man named Thomas waited for an apology that never came. Over time, the waiting tired him. One day, he noticed he was no longer waiting. Nothing dramatic happened. Letting go here is the release of expectation without resolution. As listeners, perhaps some expectations have softened. Expectations of sleep, of insight, of comfort. When expectation loosens, ease appears on its own. Another life, barely formed. A woman named Ksenia kept her room dim at night. She liked shadows. One evening, she left a lamp on. She slept anyway. Letting go here is discovering flexibility. The night adapts easily. Another story arrives. A baker named Soren watched dough rise. He used to check it often, worried it would fail. Eventually, he learned to step away. The bread rose. Letting go here is stepping back at the right time. As listeners, perhaps we have stepped back from following each word. The listening continues on its own. Another presence moves gently through. A child named Mira lined up her toys carefully before bed. One night, she forgot. Nothing was wrong in the morning. Letting go here is innocent and complete. The night carries this innocence naturally. Another life appears, then fades. A man named Otto practiced knots. He tied and untied them repeatedly. One evening, he tied one and left it. The rope held. Letting go here is releasing repetition. As listeners, repetition may be fading. The stories no longer cycle clearly. They blur together. This is natural. Another story, quiet and simple. A woman named Yelena watched snow fall outside her window. She tried once to follow individual flakes. She stopped when she felt tired. The snow continued. Letting go here is ceasing effort. The night invites ceasing. Another life drifts past. A man named Karim counted his breaths when anxious. One night, he lost count. He slept. Letting go here is forgetting the tool. Tools are helpful until they are not needed. Another presence appears. A woman named Lydia kept plants on her balcony. She watered them carefully. One evening, it rained. She did nothing. Letting go here is trusting conditions. The night provides its own conditions for rest. Another story, barely audible. A man named Jonas arranged his desk each night before leaving work. One evening, he did not. The next morning, nothing was out of place. Letting go here is releasing control over outcomes. Another life drifts by. A musician named Petra practiced scales each day. One evening, she skipped practice. Music remained. Letting go here is understanding that essence does not vanish when routine pauses. As listeners, perhaps we are no longer engaging in the routine of listening actively. The essence of rest remains. Another presence fades in and out. A woman named Sophie waited for the right moment to sleep. One night, she stopped waiting. Sleep came. Letting go here is releasing readiness. Another story, almost nothing. A man named Leon closed his eyes without meaning to. That was enough. The night has become a field without edges. Stories no longer need to be complete. They dissolve as soon as they appear. We are no longer being guided. We are being carried. If sleep has already arrived, then this carrying is happening without awareness. If listening continues, it does so without effort. There is no need to hold on to the theme, the words, or even the presence of listening itself. Everything essential is already happening on its own. The night continues, steady and kind, allowing all remaining effort to loosen, allowing all unnecessary holding to fade, until what remains is only this quiet continuity, this simple being, resting without question, without direction, without need. And in this resting, nothing more is required. The night has become so even that it is difficult to say where one moment ends and another begins. It is no longer moving us forward. It is simply holding everything in a wide, gentle sameness. The stories that come now are lighter still. They are not meant to be remembered. They arrive like soft footsteps on a distant path, heard briefly, then gone. There is a small village on a plain where a woman named Maren lived. Each evening, she closed her shutters at the same time, turned down the lamp, and sat quietly until sleep came. For many years, Maren believed this routine was what allowed her to sleep. If she was delayed, if the lamp was too bright, if the shutters were left open, she felt uneasy. One night, she forgot to close one shutter. Moonlight spilled across the floor. She noticed, then did nothing. Sleep came anyway. The next evening, she closed the shutter again, but without the old seriousness. The routine remained, but the grip around it had softened. Letting go here did not remove structure. It removed fear. As listeners, perhaps the structures that support our rest are still present. The sound of this voice, the rhythm of the words, but the fear of doing it wrong has loosened. Another life appears quietly. In a narrow house by a canal, there lived a man named Dario, who kept his belongings carefully arranged. shoes aligned, papers stacked, keys always in the same place. He told himself this order kept him calm. One evening, after a long day, he left his keys on the table instead of the hook. He noticed the next morning and felt a brief flicker of discomfort. Then it passed. From that day on, order remained. But anxiety did not insist on it. Letting go here is the release of the belief that calm depends on control. The night teaches this gently. Calm arrives even when things are not arranged. Another presence drifts in. A woman named Selma lived near a quarry. Each day, she heard the distant echo of stone being cut. At first, the sound bothered her. She listened for it, braced against it. Over time, she stopped listening for it. The sound continued. Her reaction did not. Letting go here is not silence. It is the end of resistance. As listeners, we may still hear sounds around us. The night does not remove them. It removes the need to fight them. Another life, barely outlined. A man named Håkan repaired fences along long stretches of land. He worked alone, walking miles each day. He used to plan his route carefully, calculating how much he could repair before sunset. Some days, he fell behind. One evening, tired, he stopped early and sat on a post, watching the sky darken. The fence waited. From then on, he allowed himself to stop when the body said, "Stop." Letting go here is listening to what no longer argues. The night is very good at quieting arguments. Another story arrives softly. In a small apartment, there lived a woman named Chiara, who liked to fall asleep with music playing. She believed silence was too empty. One night, the device failed. The room was quiet. She lay awake briefly, then noticed the quiet was not empty at all. It was full of distant, ordinary sounds. She slept. Letting go here is discovering that what we feared was lacking was already sufficient. As listeners, perhaps silence is weaving itself between the words now. It does not need to be filled. Another life passes gently. A man named Borislav counted steps as he walked home each evening. It gave him a sense of completion when he reached a certain number. One night, distracted, he lost count. He arrived home anyway. The sense of completion followed him without the number. Letting go here is releasing the measure while keeping the arrival. Another presence appears. A woman named Amaya tended a small fire in her hearth. She watched it carefully, adjusting logs, coaxing the flames. One evening, she let it burn without tending. The fire settled into a steady glow. She realized she had been adding effort to something that already knew how to burn. Letting go here is trusting natural balance. The night has its own balance. We do not need to manage it. Another story, faint. A man named Risto kept notes of his dreams. He wrote them each morning, trying to preserve them. One morning, he woke without remembering anything. He felt rested. He stopped writing. Letting go here is releasing the need to capture what fades naturally. Dreams do not require preservation to do their work. Another life drifts by. A woman named Nadia, no, a different name now. Eleanor sat at her desk each night, reviewing the day. She believed reflection was responsible. One evening, she was too tired. She went to bed without reviewing. Nothing was lost. Letting go here is the release of self-surveillance. The night offers relief from watching ourselves. Another presence appears, almost transparent. A man named Koji walked through a bamboo grove each morning. He listened to the leaves move in the wind. One day, there was no wind. He walked anyway. Letting go here is allowing variation without disappointment. As listeners, the texture of listening may change. It does not need to remain consistent. Another story comes quietly. A woman named Petra, no, a new name. Milena kept her glasses beside the bed. She put them on immediately each morning. One night, she woke and did not reach for them. The room was blurred, but gentle. She drifted back to sleep. Letting go here is allowing things to remain unclear. Clarity is not required in the night. Another life, barely sketched. A man named Asher listened to this voice earlier in the night with more attention. Now, the words float. He does not correct this. Letting go here is allowing attention to loosen. Another presence moves softly through. A woman named Yvette waited for a feeling of drowsiness to confirm sleep was coming. One night, she stopped checking. Sleep came when it came. Letting go here is releasing confirmation. The night does not send signals we must interpret. Another story, almost soundless. A man named Leaf placed his phone face down before bed. He still thought about messages. One night, the thoughts faded. The phone remained. Letting go here is mental, not physical. Another life drifts past. A woman named Soren, no, knew again. Kalina used to rehearse conversations before sleep. She replayed what she might say the next day. One night, the rehearsal did not begin. She slept. Letting go here is releasing rehearsal. The night is not a stage. Another presence appears. A man named Ovidiu watched the moon through his window. He tried to notice changes. At some point, he stopped comparing nights. The moon remained. Letting go here is releasing comparison across time. As listeners, we do not need to compare this moment to earlier moments of the night. Another story, quiet and brief. A woman named Renee kept a list of things to do tomorrow. One night, she forgot to check it. Tomorrow arrived anyway. Letting go here is trusting continuity. Another life appears, then fades. A child named Thomason tried to stay awake to hear the end of a story. He did not. The story ended without him. Letting go here is innocence. As the night deepens further, innocence returns easily. There is no requirement to witness everything. Another presence, nearly gone. A man named Ilhan closed a book mid-sentence. He slept. The story waited. Letting go here is knowing nothing important is missed. Another life drifts softly by. A woman named Greta adjusted the blankets until they felt just right. One night, she stopped adjusting. Warmth remained. Letting go here is physical ease. Another presence appears. A man named Shimon listened for the moment. Sleep began. He tried to notice the transition. He did not. Sleep came anyway. Letting go here is releasing the need to mark the moment. The night does not announce transitions. Another story, almost nothing. A woman named Leora rested without naming it rest. That was enough. The stories now are barely stories. They are small gestures of release, tiny easings that require no attention. We are no longer following a thread. We are resting in the fabric itself. If sleep is present, then the night is doing what it does best. If listening continues, it does so without edges. Nothing is being asked. Nothing is being measured. Nothing is being held. The night remains wide and gentle, allowing everything that still clings to loosen in its own time, until there is only this quiet continuity, this soft holding without effort, carrying us exactly as we are, without direction, without demand, without need. The night no longer feels like a container we are inside of. It feels like something we are resting within, the way a stone rests in a river without being carried away. Nothing presses. Nothing asks. The words that come now are slower, softer, as if they are aware they do not need to arrive fully formed. There is a small coastal road where a man named Evren used to walk each evening. He walked at the same pace, along the same stretch, turning back at the same old marker stone. For years, he believed the walk itself was important. If he missed it, he felt unsettled, as if something essential had been left undone. One evening, rain came suddenly. Evren stepped outside, felt the rain on his face, and turned back inside. He did not feel unsettled. The next evening, he walked again, but the walk felt lighter, less necessary. Letting go here was quiet. The habit remained, but the fear beneath it dissolved. As listeners, perhaps habits of listening remain too. The voice continues, the rhythm remains, but the need for it to function in a certain way has softened. Another presence drifts in. In a room with a single window, a woman named Orla folded paper cranes. She had learned long ago that 1,000 cranes were said to bring good fortune. She folded them slowly, carefully, counting as she went. One night, she fell asleep mid-fold. The paper rested unfinished beside her. In the morning, she did not remember how many she had made. She did not continue. Nothing bad happened. Letting go here is the release of superstition, the belief that a specific effort is required to keep life moving safely forward. The night gently dissolves these beliefs. It shows us that life continues without our vigilance. Another life appears faintly. A man named Ionescu watched the news each night before bed. He told himself it was important to stay informed. Over time, he noticed that the stories followed him into sleep, replaying without resolution. One night, he turned the television off early. The world continued. His sleep deepened. Letting go here is not ignorance. It is choosing rest over unnecessary burden. As listeners, perhaps we are choosing rest now, not as a decision, but as a natural drift. Another presence moves gently through. A woman named Beatrice kept her curtains open at night so she could see the street light outside. She found comfort in its steady glow. One night, the light went out. She noticed the darkness, then noticed the stars beyond. She slept. Letting go here is allowing one source of comfort to be replaced by another, without struggle. The night offers many forms of comfort. We do not need to cling to one. Another story arrives, barely audible. A man named Tadeusz sorted his thoughts by writing lists. He listed worries, plans, reminders. One night, the pen ran out of ink. He lay down without finishing. The lists waited. He slept. Letting go here is accepting incompleteness. The night is incomplete by nature. It does not finish things. It simply carries them until morning, or not. Another life drifts in, quiet and ordinary. A woman named Mireia practiced saying no in her mind before sleep. she rehearsed boundaries she wished she had spoken. One night, she was too tired to rehearse. In the morning, she felt no regret. Letting go here is releasing imagined conversations. The night does not need rehearsal. It allows things to remain unsaid. Another presence appears. A man named Arjun lay awake listening for silence. He believed true rest required it. One night, insects chirped loudly outside his window. He slept anyway. Letting go here is releasing conditions. Rest does not require perfection. Another story drifts past. A woman named Clara arranged her pillows each night, shaping them carefully. One night, she fell asleep before finishing. Her body found its place. Letting go here is physical trust. The body knows how to rest without instruction. Another life appears, soft and brief. A man named Giannis watched shadows move across the wall as cars passed outside. He tried to identify each shadow. Eventually, he stopped. The shadows continued. Letting go here is releasing interpretation. As listeners, perhaps the words are now shadows on a wall. We do not need to identify them. Another presence moves quietly through. A woman named Helga kept a clock near her bed. She watched the numbers change when she could not sleep. One night, she turned the clock away. Time continued. Sleep came. Letting go here is releasing the need to monitor. The night does not require supervision. Another story, faint and gentle. A man named Yusuf kept a prayer he recited before sleep. He had said it every night for decades. One night, the words did not come. He slept peacefully. The prayer had already done its work. Letting go here is releasing form while essence remains. Another life drifts by. A woman named Rosalind waited for a feeling of calm before closing her eyes. One night, she closed them anyway. Calm followed. Letting go here is acting without waiting for permission. The night gives permission freely. Another presence appears, almost transparent. A child named Emile listened to the hum of a refrigerator in the kitchen. He counted the cycles. He lost track. Sleep arrived. Letting go here is simple forgetting. Another story, barely formed. A man named Stefan worried about tomorrow's weather. He checked the forecast repeatedly. One night, he forgot. Rain came or did not. He slept. Letting go here is trusting uncertainty. The night does not ask us to predict. Another life drifts past. A woman named Noor adjusted the temperature before bed, seeking the perfect balance. One night, she left it alone. Her body adjusted. Letting go here is adaptation without effort. Another presence arrives softly. A man named Paolo reread the same book each night. believing it helped him sleep. One evening, he closed it early. Sleep came anyway. Letting go here is discovering that the support was internal all along. Another story, quiet and brief. A woman named Inga rested her hand on her chest when anxious. One night, her hand rested beside her. Her breathing softened. Letting go here is releasing a gesture without losing comfort. Another life drifts by. A man named Farid listened for the moment the house became completely still. He stopped listening. Stillness arrived. Letting go here is allowing rather than seeking. As listeners, perhaps we are no longer seeking sleep, or meaning, or even rest. They arrive when seeking stops. Another presence appears, nearly gone. A woman named Liesel held on to the last thought of the day carefully. One night, it slipped away. Nothing replaced it. She slept. Letting go here is releasing the need for a final thought. The night does not require closure. Another story, almost nothing. A man named Kenji closed his eyes and did not open them again until morning. That was enough. The night has thinned the stories to gestures, to breath-sized releases that require no attention. We are no longer being guided through a theme. The theme has dissolved into the background, like a scent that remains after the source is gone. If sleep is present, then the night is complete in the most natural way. If listening continues, it is loose, unburdened, almost dreamlike. Nothing is being held. Nothing needs to be remembered. The night continues, steady and kind, allowing whatever remains of wakefulness to soften at its own pace, until even the idea of letting go is no longer necessary, because nothing is being held in the first place. And in this wide, effortless quiet, we rest whether awake or asleep, carried gently, without direction, without demand, as the night goes on exactly as it should. The night now feels like a long, slow breath that never quite ends. There is no sense of moving forward, no sense of arriving. We are simply here, held in the same gentle quiet, where nothing needs to be added and nothing needs to be taken away. The stories that come at this hour are almost weightless. They do not arrive with edges. They drift in, linger briefly, and fade, leaving behind a feeling rather than a memory. There was a small hill outside a village where a man named Aurelian often sat at dusk. He did not bring anything with him. No book, no tools, no plans. He simply sat and watched the light change. When he was younger, Aurelian used to think this sitting should lead to something, a thought, an insight, a feeling of peace he could recognize and keep. He waited for it each evening. Over time, the waiting grew tired. Now, he sat without expecting anything. Some evenings felt quiet. Some felt restless. Some passed without notice at all. He did not measure the difference. Letting go here was not about finding peace. It was about letting go of the demand that peace announce itself. As listeners, perhaps we no longer need to notice how this listening feels. Calm or restless, drowsy or alert. It all belongs equally to the night. Another presence drifts in softly. In a narrow house near a railway, a woman named Lisette lived alone. Each night, the late train passed, its sound rising and fading. At first, Lisette marked the sound. She knew the schedule. She waited for it, counted the seconds until it disappeared. One night, she fell asleep before it came. From then on, sometimes she heard it, and sometimes she did not. Either way, the night continued. Letting go here was the release of tracking. The mind likes to track time, sound, progress. The night loosens this habit naturally. Another life appears, quiet and ordinary. A man named Bence prepared his bed each night with care. He smoothed the sheets, fluffed the pillow, adjusted the blankets. One evening, exhausted, he lay down without arranging anything. He slept deeply. In the morning, the bed was just a bed. Letting go here was the release of preparation. Preparation has its place, but rest does not always require it. Another presence moves gently through. A woman named Kaori kept a small lamp on at night because she liked the soft glow. One evening, the bulb burned out. She lay in the dark, surprised at first, then curious. The darkness did not feel empty. It felt wide. She slept. Letting go here was allowing the dark to be enough. The night is generous in this way. It does not need to be softened or adjusted. It already knows how to hold us. Another story arrives faintly. A man named Sylvan worked long hours and brought his worries home with him. At night, he replayed the day again and again. One evening, he fell asleep mid-thought. In the morning, the worries had not multiplied. Over time, this happened more often. Letting go here was the discovery that unfinished thoughts do not cause harm when left unfinished. The night takes care of what we do not finish. Another life drifts in, almost without form. A woman named Hannah used to review conversations before sleep, imagining better words. different endings. One night, she was too tired to replay anything. She slept. The conversations did not follow her. Letting go here was the release of revision. The night does not revise. It simply rests. Another presence appears. A man named Oscar lay awake listening to his heartbeat. He worried when it felt fast, then worried when it felt slow. One night, he stopped listening. The heart continued. Letting go here was trusting what works without attention. As listeners, perhaps we are no longer monitoring ourselves, our breathing, our alertness, our progress toward sleep. Everything necessary continues on its own. Another story drifts past. A woman named Mirek. No, a different name now. Tamsin kept a list of worries by her bed. She believed writing them down helped her sleep. One night, she forgot the list. Sleep arrived anyway. The worries waited quietly. Letting go here was trusting that worries do not need constant attention to remain manageable. Another presence comes gently. A man named Yuto liked to fall asleep facing the window. He believed it helped him feel less enclosed. One night, he turned the other way without thinking. Nothing changed. Letting go here was releasing a small belief about comfort. The body knows many ways to be at ease. Another life appears, soft and slow. A woman named Elsbeth counted the minutes before sleep, believing it took too long. One night, she stopped counting. Sleep arrived without announcement. Letting go here was releasing impatience. The night does not hurry. Another presence drifts in. A man named Radu adjusted the volume of this voice earlier in the night, seeking the perfect level. Now, he no longer notices it. Letting go here is the fading of preference. As listeners, sound may now be simply sound, neither too much nor too little. Another story, faint. A woman named Neela rested her hand on the edge of the mattress, feeling its firmness. At some point, she forgot her hand. Rest continued. Letting go here was physical forgetting. Another life drifts by. A man named Elias waited for a sense of heaviness in his eyes before allowing sleep. One night, he closed his eyes without waiting. Sleep followed. Letting go here was releasing permission. The night offers permission freely. Another presence appears, barely outlined. A woman named Sina kept her window cracked open for fresh air. One evening, she forgot to open it. The air remained. Letting go here was discovering that comfort does not vanish easily. Another story moves gently through. A man named Thomas checked the door twice each night to make sure it was locked. One night, he checked once. The night passed safely. Letting go here was trusting enough. Another life appears, nearly transparent. A woman named Ayla lay awake listening for the moment when thoughts stopped. They did not stop. She slept anyway. Letting go here was accepting that thoughts need not disappear for rest to arrive. The night does not require a quiet mind. It simply allows a resting one. Another presence drifts past. A man named Jarek tried to hold on to the last word he heard before sleep. He lost it. Nothing replaced it. Letting go here was releasing continuity. The night does not need a bridge between moments. Another story, almost nothing. A woman named Linnea felt her eyelids grow heavy and wondered if she should notice it. She did not. Sleep came. Letting go here was effortless. Another life drifts by. A man named Hassan listened to this voice earlier with interest. Now, the interest has softened. This is not disinterest. It is ease. Letting go here is allowing attention to rest where it wants. Another presence appears. A woman named Petra. No. Again, a new name. Anouk waited for the perfect stillness before drifting off. One night, she drifted off amid sounds, thoughts, and shifting light. Stillness arrived later. Letting go here was trusting the process without managing it. Another story, faint and gentle. A man named Leo rested his head deeper into the pillow. Then he stopped noticing the pillow. Letting go here was physical surrender. Another life drifts past. A woman named Marisol listened to her own breathing and tried to make it slow. One night, she stopped trying. The breathing found its own rhythm. Letting go here was releasing control. The night breathes us without instruction. Another presence appears, almost gone. A man named Victor held on to the last clear thought of the evening. It slipped away. Sleep came. Letting go here was natural. And now, the stories are no longer arriving clearly. They are dissolving even as they appear, like mist thinning in the early hours before dawn, though dawn itself is still far away. What remains is not emptiness, but a gentle continuity, a sense that nothing is required, nothing is missing. We are no longer holding the thread of this teaching. The teaching has already loosened its grip on us. If sleep is here, then this voice is simply part of the background, like wind or distant water. If listening continues, it does so without effort, without intention. The night remains wide and kind, holding us without hands, allowing everything that can be set down to be set down, until even the idea of letting go has faded, and only this quiet resting remains, steady and unremarkable, exactly as it is. The night has become so smooth that it no longer feels like something we are inside of. It feels like something we are floating within, without edges, without direction, without effort. The distinction between listening and resting has thinned almost completely. The stories that arise now are like small ripples on still water. They appear, they soften, and they disappear before asking to be noticed. There was a narrow bridge at the edge of a town where a man named Kiro used to stop each evening on his way home. He leaned on the railing and watched the water move beneath him. He told himself this pause helped him leave the day behind. At first, he stood there deliberately, counting a few breaths, waiting for a sense of completion. Some evenings, it came. Other evenings, it did not. One night, distracted, he crossed the bridge without stopping. He slept well. The next evening, he stopped again, but without waiting for anything. Sometimes he paused. Sometimes he did not. Either way, the day ended. Letting go here was the release of the belief that closure must be marked. As listeners, perhaps we are no longer marking transitions. We are not waiting for sleep to begin or for wakefulness to end. The night holds both without asking us to choose. Another presence drifts gently into view. In a quiet room above a bakery, a woman named Sabina lay awake listening to the early morning workers arrive. She used to resent the noise, believing it pulled her away from rest. Over time, she noticed that even when the sounds came, her body still rested. The sounds no longer felt like interruptions. They were simply part of the night, continuing into morning. Letting go here was not silence, but permission. The night does not require quiet to be kind. Another life appears, faint and ordinary. A man named Rolf kept a notebook by his bed. He wrote down thoughts he did not want to forget. Sometimes the thoughts felt important. Sometimes they were only fragments. One night, the notebook slipped to the floor, and he did not reach for it. The thoughts passed. He slept. Letting go here was trusting that not everything needs to be preserved. As listeners, perhaps we no longer feel the need to preserve this moment, these words, or even this listening. They are already doing what they came to do. Another presence moves quietly through. A woman named Kezia practiced gratitude before sleep. She named 3 things she was thankful for each night. One evening, tired, she named none. Gratitude did not vanish. Letting go here was releasing performance. The night does not require us to feel a certain way. Another story arrives softly. A man named Tomas lay awake feeling the weight of the blankets. He adjusted them, then adjusted them again. At some point, he stopped adjusting. Warmth remained. Letting go here was physical acceptance. The body finds its balance when left alone. Another life drifts in. A woman named Noor believed she needed to feel sleepy before sleeping. She waited for it carefully. One night, she closed her eyes without waiting. Sleep came when it came. Letting go here was releasing timing. The night moves on its own rhythm. Another presence appears, barely outlined. A man named Henrik reviewed plans for tomorrow before bed. He believed this helped him prepare. One night, his thoughts wandered instead. Tomorrow still arrived. Letting go here was trusting continuity. The future does not require rehearsal. Another story fades in gently. A woman named Amina kept her window slightly open to hear the night sounds. She liked to know the world was still there. One evening, she closed it without thinking. The sense of the world remained. Letting go here was discovering that connection does not depend on sensory proof. Another life appears, almost transparent. A man named Felix counted the pages he read before sleep. One night, he lost count. The reading ended naturally. Letting go here was releasing measurement. The night does not measure our rest. Another presence drifts by. A woman named Ivana felt restless when she could not fall asleep quickly. She told herself she should already be asleep. One night, she stopped telling herself anything. Rest deepened. Letting go here was releasing judgment. The night does not judge how long rest takes. Another story appears, quiet and brief. A man named Satoshi listened for the sound of his house settling at night. He waited for it to feel safe. One night, he did not listen. Safety remained. Letting go here was releasing vigilance. As listeners, perhaps vigilance has softened. We are not guarding the night. The night is holding us. Another presence moves gently through. A woman named Yelka kept a light on in the hallway in case she needed to wake. One night, the light burned out. She slept peacefully. Letting go here was releasing readiness. The night does not require preparedness. Another life drifts past. A man named Laurent watched the ceiling until patterns appeared. He entertained himself with them. One night, he closed his eyes sooner. Nothing was lost. Letting go here was releasing distraction. Another story, faint and gentle. A woman named Una adjusted the pillow under her neck carefully. At some point, she stopped noticing it. Support remained. Letting go here was bodily trust. Another presence appears. A man named Jamil worried about how tired he would be tomorrow. One night, he stopped worrying. Tomorrow arrived with what it arrived with. Letting go here was releasing anticipation. The night does not bargain with tomorrow. Another life drifts by. A woman named Cleo listened to her thoughts echo. Eventually, the echo faded. She did not try to follow it. Letting go here was allowing fading. Another story, barely formed. A man named Victor held on to the feeling of being awake. It softened. He did not resist. Letting go here was natural surrender. Another presence appears. A woman named Rana waited for the perfect position before resting. One night, she rested imperfectly. Rest was enough. Letting go here was releasing optimization. The night does not optimize, it allows. Another life drifts through. A man named Elias noticed the rhythm of this voice earlier. Now, the rhythm blends with everything else. Letting go here was blending. Another story, quiet and small. A woman named Freya closed her eyes without expectation. That was sufficient. Another presence appears. A man named Dusan felt himself drifting and wondered if he should hold on. He did not. Drifting continued. Letting go here was allowing movement. The night carries us whether we steer or not. Another life drifts past. A woman named Salen listened for meaning. Meaning faded. Presence remained. Letting go here was releasing interpretation. Another story. Almost nothing. A man named Elon rested. That is all. The stories now are nearly indistinguishable from silence. They no longer ask to be followed. They are gestures of easing, breaths of release, movements so small they do not announce themselves. We are no longer listening in the usual way. We are resting with sound, resting with words, resting with the night itself. If sleep is already here, then nothing further needs to be said. If listening continues, it does so without effort, without curiosity, without need. The night remains wide and gentle, carrying us without direction, without expectation, allowing everything unnecessary to fall away until there is nothing left to set down. And even that is no longer noticed. We remain here or we do not. Either way, the night continues exactly as it should. The night has carried us a long way, though it never felt like a journey. There were no steps to take, no destination to reach, only a gentle movement, story by story, moment by moment, as things were set down without effort. As we rest here now, we can sense how the evening unfolded on its own. Stories appeared, stayed briefly, and passed. Lives touched lightly, then faded. Nothing needed to be held onto. Nothing needed to be resolved. If you are still listening, You may notice how different this feels from the beginning. Not better, not worse, simply quieter, more spacious, as if the mind has loosened its grip without being asked. And if sleep has already arrived, then these words are no longer instructions or stories. They are only sound, moving through a resting body, doing no work at all. We can look back gently, without effort, at the way the night held many small acts of letting go, a habit loosening, an expectation fading, a story ending without needing a conclusion. Again and again, across many lives, the same simple movement repeated itself. Nothing dramatic, nothing forced, just easing. Now, the emphasis no longer needs to be on understanding. Whatever understanding was needed has already happened, or it has not, and either way, nothing is missing. What remains is rest. Awareness softens toward the weight of the body, toward the quiet rhythm that continues on its own, toward the simple fact of being here, or already drifting away. There is no need to check whether sleep is coming. There is no need to stay with these words. There is no need to let go of anything else. If thoughts appear, they can appear. If they fade, they can fade. If sleep deepens, it can deepen. The night knows how to finish without being told how. So, we allow this final moment to be just as it is, unmarked, unmeasured, complete in its own quiet way. Sleep well, and thank you for joining us here at Calm Monk.